Welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live, youtube.com/cover3. Thanks to all of you that are joining us. We do have some questions from the big old bag of mail to tackle. We have some current events as well. If you want to make sure that you never miss a live show, or even just if you want to show your support for the Cover 3 podcast, go to youtube.com/cover3, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications so that you know when we go live. If you were listening on the audio form, thanks as well. A reminder, one of the best ways to get questions into a future mailbag episode is going to be to leave a 5-star review. In that review, put your mailbag question. We will add it to the big old bag of mail for a future mailbag episode. We will be, by the end of the year, giving out some Super Bowl picks. Why? Well, because we're a football podcast, and we know all these players, and we watch, and we're Americans, and we have thoughts and opinions on the Super Bowl, just like the guy or gal in the cubicle three spots down the way, or your boss, family members, whoever. So we're going to get those out as well. But as we begin here shortly after 11 a.m. Eastern time, it is now 10 a.m. Central time in Birmingham. And why that's important is that means that Bryan Harsin is sitting in a room in a meeting of the SEC head football coaches representing Auburn University. A fascinating development that he has already been photographed walking in. He is there, and he is representing Auburn University. We can get into the new employee duty to cooperate policy, which was just recently instituted and is a hilarious, subjectively hilarious development in this story. But I just want to start this conversation with, are you surprised that Bryan Harsin made the trip to Birmingham and that he is sitting in that meeting with SEC head football coaches where, oh my, to be a fly on the wall and hear those conversations. But are you surprised that we've gotten to this point where he is still the head coach?
Yeah. Somewhat surprised. I mean, no, you have to think if they had enough to get him out right now for cause, they would.
Correct.
So my read through this is either they are continuing to try to gather things for cause, or they're sort of just kind of, do I really want to pay this? Like, I know it's probably either going to Uncle Sam or a write-off through my school, but does it really work that way all the time? How much can you actually put through Tiger Unlimited? There's some complications there, I think.
I'm not surprised. I mean, we've been expecting it, and I think it's going to happen, but I'm not surprised simply because, like you're just kind of saying, like, they want to fire him for cause so they can get out of paying the buyout. But they have no cause other than we don't like the recruiting class and players transferred, which there's really nothing that says that's cause to fire him. That's just, he's not doing a good job. We want to fire him, but you're going to have to pay him based on the contract you gave him and how it was worded. So I'm not surprised because, like, you go back to what happened to Tennessee with Jeremy Pruitt. There was cause. Like, they were able to do, like, they had those NCAA violations they were able to turn in and do it. And I'm guessing Auburn's probably digging for some stuff like that they could find themselves, and hopefully that works. But when Harsin's been on vacation, you can't really do the investigation that you want to do. So it's hard to really come to a conclusion there or find cause, because there's been a lot of rumors and message board stuff, but there's really not a lot of concrete stuff that says, okay, this is why we have to fire him.
So is it a week ago our outgoing president says we are trying to separate facts from fiction? Then it is reported by Pete Thamel and others that this investigation has been expanded. We are expanding our investigation. We are talking to former coaches. We are talking to former players. We are continuing to try to expand this investigation. And yet, Bud, as you mentioned, there is no development. Now, I mentioned the employee duty to cooperate policy just a little bit ago. This is a new bit of policy which compels university employees to cooperate fully with any kind of investigation. It was effective February 8th. 2 days ago. We have put in a new policy, and the reason why it is important is because, and I want to make sure I read this, under these sanctions, which is Section 8, violations of this policy may result in disciplinary action up to and including termination.
And was that
If they fire him for this February 8th policy,
there's no way in hell that holds up in court. No way in hell. You can't post ex post facto or whatever the hell. I can't remember the Latin term for it, but you can't make the rule after you sign it and then hold the person accountable for it.
I mean, lawyer, help me out here. Like, what is your read? Because I'm sure you've read the policy in and of itself. I gave a very, very quick. If I was wrong on any of the dummy explainer of it, please correct me. But like, what's your read on if any of this is actionable as it pertains to Bryan Harsin?
All right, so like quick 90-second thing on this. Almost all companies have a duty to cooperate with investigations policy. CBS has one. I'm sure Auburn has one and had one. I don't really buy the idea that they secretly got rid of it so that Bruce Pearl didn't have to cooperate with their investigation. Although he didn't cooperate, they probably have a bit of an out with like, hey, if there's an ongoing criminal investigation, you don't have to cooperate. That's probably what Pearl used because remember, there was the whole FBI thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I read this as an update to the policy. They were probably looking for ways for cause and like, hey, like, do you think we can get them for duty to cooperate? This is just my opinion here. And I said, well, let's make sure the policy is strong. It could also be used to coerce people to turn over personal cell phone records or personal emails if they believed that company business, if they had reasonable suspicion that company business was being conducted on those devices or communication channels. Tom, no, I don't think it would hold up in court, especially since you dropped it a day before the guy came back from vacation when it was scheduled to end anyway. It could actually, though, if you wanted to, and you wanted to get out of paying the initial down payment of $9 million, I think there's a possibility that it could be a delay. If you wanted to cite that, it could be potentially a delay tactic, right, where you have to take you to court for that. Would it hold up? I doubt.
That was the Kevin Ollie, the men's basketball coach at UConn, fought it in court, and then all of a sudden UConn found itself with a big old lump sum payment due about 30 days after the initial ruling, and their hope was that it would hold up, and it was a delay tactic, but the bill's going to come due eventually. Is Auburn really doing the I ain't got it now, do whatever you can to get a delay? Like I'm going to reach out to the IRS, and I'm going to tell you that I ain't got it and that I need to like file the dummy return or the extension or try to figure something out. I mean, this is it is remarkable. It is truly remarkable that we've gotten to this point. What is Auburn thinking? Like, how about this? Is Auburn actually going to bring Bryan Harsin back for the 2022 season?
No. I mean, how can you at this point? Like, what? Imagine that work environment. Like, just think of how it is right now at those coach meetings. What people are probably talking about while in there. Now, imagine Bryan Harsin shows up to spring practice, and everybody's got to pretend like, yeah, no, this is fine. Everything's fine. We just, we got into a fight. We're all past it now. We're moving on. No, there's no way in hell he's going to be coaching the first game of the season. It's just a question of Auburn's trying to figure out how much it's going to pay, how much it can get rid of. Maybe they can come to a settlement, something. They're going to fire him. It's just they're doing everything they can in their power to try to save as much money as possible while doing it.
That's my read on it too. And I like, we may not like the reasons, but I don't see the recruiting getting any better. Bama's won a title in the last couple of years. LSU's won a title in the last couple of years. Georgia, another team they play on an annual basis, has won a title like in the last month. And of course, A&M just put together the #1 recruiting class of all time. They have no juice on the recruiting trail right now. I don't think the staff he hired was equipped to recruit the SEC. To me, look, we can say that their boosters and admin are potentially a mess and may have jumped the gun here as far as their like, hey, let's get them out. Oh, it's not for cause. Let me see what I got here. It might be pulling like I got to run to the ATM move, right? We've all probably done that before. But it's very difficult for me to see him coaching Auburn this fall, given all the swirling. Like now they have to go out and get a new OC as well.
Right.
It'll be their 6th OC. He has 6 wins there, or their 6th coordinator overall. Derek Mason left and took a $400,000 pay cut to do so. Like clearly things aren't good there. It doesn't mean the way Auburn is going about this is right. I don't really feel bad for Harsin because if there's no cause, he's going to get a huge fat check. I do kind of feel for the GAs and the guys in the back offices who aren't making $500,000 and wondering if they're going to have jobs come this fall. Like that's kind of who really gets hurt in this. In addition to the students.
Who do you think they're going to get to replace him at this point, though? Because like
Jeff Grimes.
What we talked about, like Chip and I talked about this a little bit on Monday. Part of the reason they want to move on is the recruiting, because it's not what they want it to be. But like, there's kind of a curve you have to grade in the SEC in that, yeah, okay, great. Top 20 class, top 10 class. That's great. But if you're fourth in your own division, being in the top 10 doesn't really matter. The truth is, if you're going to win the SEC consistently and win national titles, you've probably got to be a top 5 recruiting class year in and year out. Who's the coach that comes in right now that's available that can do that for Auburn?
Yeah, I don't know that there is one that immediately jumpstarts it. But I think if you look at the comments that the guys who transferred out made about the inability to relate to players from certain backgrounds in the South, I think he's toast there, right? Like those comments are going to be believed, I believe, at high schools that those kids went to and, back in their neighborhoods. So you may not have somebody who knocks out of the park recruiting wise, but I think there is reason to believe it would be an upgrade recruiting wise.
Do you think that Jeff Grimes is sort of if you could guess or bet the name that all the power players are throwing them out amongst each other on the group chats and when they're getting together and when they're meeting and when they're trying to plot out the next steps, believing that this will end with them getting their way and Bryan Harsin being out, when it comes time for offering a suggestion or requesting or demanding, depending on the level of influence that you have, do you think that Jeff Grimes is the popular name? And by the way, Baylor offensive coordinator, who, as we mentioned, did a fantastic job with the Bears defense transition from 2020 struggles to 2021 success. You go to the New Year's Six Bowl. He was at BYU before that, but he also was at Auburn as an offensive line coach earlier in his career. Do you get the sense that that's the name that's sort of the leader or at the top of the leaderboard?
I don't know if he's a leader or not. I do believe that Auburn is probably going to do the sort of rebound thing to where if you were offensive, you go defensive, right? If the reason you're firing a guy is because he didn't understand Auburn's culture and didn't understand Auburn, then all of a sudden you rebound and you get a guy who's been at Auburn, which I don't think they need to do, to be clear. Like, just because you made a bad hire in Bryan Harsin, who doesn't understand how to recruit in the South, does not mean that everybody who has never coached at Auburn should be DQ'd from the coaching search. I mean, I'm sure they'll look at Kevin Steele. I'm sure they'll look at Hugh Freeze, who has never been at Auburn to my knowledge, but obviously like he gets it on what you have to do to recruit well in the Southeast. Like there's things you got to do, right? NIL that thing. So those would be kind of the three I would, off the top of my head, I would think.
I'm just trying to think of a historical reference for somebody who staged a coup, lost, and then still got it like a year later.
Do you have one?
No, not off the top of my head. I'll spend time thinking about it.
Okay. Because
I've got one. I'm not going to say it, but I'll send it to the group chat.
If Kevin Steele he was introduced officially as Miami's defensive coordinator, I think on Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, like earlier this week. Yeah.
If he bounces and then ends up landing at Auburn after, as you mentioned, Tom, all of that time, that would be a very, very interesting way to go about this. And to my knowledge, Bryan Harsin has multiple staff positions that still need to be filled out, or is it just offensive coordinator?
It's both coordinators, I thought. Or did they hire a Mason replacement?
I thought, yeah, Jeff Getting.
Oh, okay. I missed that. So yeah, at least the OC, and I don't know about position coaches. I can't say I've been paying super close attention to that.
Jeff Schmedding. Yeah, they had that just a little bit after the news of Derek Mason going to Oklahoma State. And as you mentioned, the $400,000 pay cut comment from the chat. What do you think about it? I think that it is incredibly indicative of the message that's being sent all across the SEC when a respected voice like Derek Mason decides to take a pay cut to leave. Then you're looking back at the staff and wondering why he might want to do that.
Sorry, I was too busy laughing at what Bud texted us.
We all try to keep it together. We agree that's probably not something we want to say on the.
No, but
yeah. Okay. All right.
Solid. All right. Anything else here on the Auburn? Like, what are we looking for? Like, are we just sitting around waiting for Auburn to fire him? Are we going to go into? I mean, you got to put together a spring practice schedule at some point. I mean, there's a calendar that is running. I did want to get this out here. So can I pitch you very quickly on the one path? It was one quote from TJ Finley, Auburn quarterback, who I do believe presented, at least from a PR standpoint, the path back for Bryan Harsin to actually be the head coach. TJ Finley made a comment where he said, we're all trying to get better every single year. Coach Harsin is trying to be a better coach now than he was in year one. And if everyone saw, what we saw, then they wouldn't be talking like this. There is a path. I don't know if Bryan Harsin's willing to come out and be like, well, I need to improve. Like, I don't know if he's going to be willing to throw himself down quite like that, especially the way that he's handled things so far, reportedly. But the path back in my eyes is that it took me a year to really learn what it takes here in the SEC, but the players rally behind him and they know that he wants to be better, and he has that team meeting, and we have this open conversation and everything's great. I mean, this is so different than, well, not very different, but this is, when we have coaches that are embattled, whether reasons of scandal, whether reasons of player relations, we always have that. We had an open conversation, right? Like Kirk Ferentz came and had the open conversation, and Gary Patterson had the open conversation. Like, if Bryan Harsin emerges and the team's behind him, we had an open conversation and I'm trying to get better. To me, that is the only possible path that I see that has Bryan Harsin coaching in 2022.
Another Brian did it too. Brian Kelly, remember? Like, he started doing yoga and he started eating meals with the players, and he turned like a different shade of purple on the sidelines, like a lighter shade. And like that kind of worked for him. Ultimately, like, this is I don't want to say it's a lost year, but I have a hard time seeing Auburn do much this year, regardless of who is the coach. And if I'm Bryan Harsin, I'm just trying to get paid out. Like, it's not going to work out long-term for me at Auburn at all. Just pay me my money.
You're dug in on your position to get as much money as possible. You don't care that this drags out, because any giving up anything means less money for you. So and
you know what else? I don't want to sign that NDA.
Yeah.
Because if I'm Bryan Harsin and there's no cause, and I'm really confident there's no cause, I'm not going to sign an NDA, because I'm going to want to go out there and do a press tour and clear my name too with my check.
Amazing. We've been talking about Bryan Harsin, who might replace Bryan Harsin, whether Bryan Harsin will be the head coach of Auburn in 2022 for approximately the last 8 episodes of the Cover 3 podcast.
I mean, listen, Auburn's a mess, but we have to be grateful for all the content they're providing us.
Thanks, Darren.
They really have stepped up in a very, very big way. So we're keeping tabs on it. Auburn's living rent free in my head too, guys. So we're trying to wait and see what the developments are. We will keep you up to date on the Cover 3 podcast. All right, let's dive into the big old bag of mail. This first question comes from Dre. Just finished listening to the National Signing Day review, and will say I was a bit disappointed to hear the discussion about all the new head coaches and not really hear Mario Cristobal and Miami discussed. Miami had a class ranked in the 70s when Mario was hired, but finished with a top 15 class, highest in the state of Florida, with a good average player rating. Yes, we missed out on Shamar, but this class is still a really good complement to the youth already on the roster. We still have a good shot at Josh Connerly as well, the 5-star offensive tackle. Do you guys think Miami had a good day?
Yeah. I mean, it's only a 45-minute show, and they didn't have a great signing day. They had a pretty decent job in the 2 weeks since Mario was hired, right? And they got some guys, but they really didn't land a whole bunch of studs on signing day. So, like, for the signing day recap show, we were primarily trying to use the events of the day to then do it as a jump off point. you know, it's
well, you don't have to defend us. I mean, those are our content decisions. Let's boost Miami. That's what the people want here. They want to hear the good stuff.
Yeah, they had a good day, right? I mean, they had a very nice period, you know, between the early signing period and the late signing period. You know, they got Cyrus Moss to jump on board. He was a guy who was going to go to them at Oregon. They got Nigel Kelly to stay home out of Dillard. He's another potential impact defensive lineman. I'm not real high on Jaleel Skinner, so he's highly rated, just not one of my favorite players in the class. But Trevante Citizen is a very nice back for them out of Louisiana. They beat out Auburn and Florida and a couple other schools, you know, for him. So like they're doing a good job. I expect Cristobal to absolutely kill it down there recruiting. I mean, I feel like we've been pretty high on that hire. Maybe not super high on how long it took him to get the coordinators down there, but you know, I do like the guys he eventually got, at least on offense. Well, we'll see about defense. I mean, I don't think Kevin Steele can pull a coup down on Cristobal down there. The boosters probably don't love him like they do, you know, Mario, who went to high school with a lot of these boosters. So I think he's done a nice job. I think they're really going to kill it in this upcoming 23 cycle. But like, it's not a major impact class. Like they're probably not going to look back and say like, hey, this is the class that turned it all around for Miami. It's a nice class. The best thing he did, honestly, is not load up on a ton of 3-stars. Mm-hmm. Save spots, sell playing time next year.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, like, if you look at the overall score for the class, it's not as high as it had the last few classes have been, but it's a much smaller class. And to go along the lines of, you know, what you've been talking about the last weeks, but a lot of new coaches now at the transfer portal are for a quick kind of turnaround and quick kind of resets. Instead of just jumping in and marrying a kid for a few years, they're trying to find quick fixes in the transfer portal and not rely so much on high school players in that first early class. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing. But like you said, also only 14 commits in the class, but 10 of them are 4-stars, which is a good ratio to have. So I think that it's a good class. It's not a foundational class, but the one thing about hiring Mario Cristobal that I'm never going to be worried about for any program that hires him is, will they be able to recruit? Because that's, you know, 1, 2, and 3 on the list of priorities.
Number one, I do think that Dre was right to identify the young talent on the team. Remember, the best argument that Manny Diaz had for keeping his job was the fact that he was playing all these freshmen, and now those freshmen are going to be really foundational in the Mario Cristobal era. To be able to lean on them is something that's great. To be able to have a solid class before you bring in Josh Gaddis, who I think could really become one of your strongest recruiting assistant coaches, somebody who's very, very important in being able to build that out. So to do that before Gaddis even arrives, I think was very, very impressive. And I need to also ask one thing. The South Florida crypto bros would never let Kevin Steele get away with that, right?
No.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I just think that I was explaining that to somebody. They were asking about Josh Gaddis leaving Michigan for Miami. I said, well, you got to remember that Mario's got the South Florida crypto bros on his side. Like we've found access to new money that has not been there before. I mean, this is why is it unlike anything that Miami has seen from an investment standpoint? It's because we're fully aligned, and we ain't talking about dog coins here. You know, we are fully aligned with the good stuff.
So, like, is Miami's recruiting class going to directly correlate with the price of Bitcoin?
It's called Cryptoball. That's what we call Miami football.
Crypto. Oh my God. All right, that's good.
Yeah, we got to keep that Cryptoball.
Did you just drop that on the fly, or have you been workshopping that?
I came up with it yesterday, speaking with Adam Gold. I don't know if you know Adam Gold, but I go on. He's on the radio all across North Carolina. I go on the show every Wednesday. I was explaining to him where this money was coming from, and he didn't know. And Cryptoball, that's where it caught. So I'm glad you guys like it as well. We will be tracking Miami's performance alongside of all the valuable coins in the wallet. All right, let's take our next question. All right, we're going to stay with ACC teams and former Big East teams as well, also with an eye on the recruiting trail. Oh, 2-part question. This one will be simple. Great job covering National Signing Day and look forward to all the content ahead. Curious, Danny said he shot a 76 on National Signing Day. Who wins if all 4 of you played around? I think Danny, right?
Danny.
Yeah. I know who finishes last.
Would that be you?
Yeah, I don't golf, so I'll be there drinking and driving the cart.
Carefully, hopefully.
We'll see. I mean,
I've seen too many golf cart accidents to endorse just like a total over the edge driver situation. But I mean, it's Danny. I don't flirt with numbers in the 70s. So
no.
Okay, cool.
We did have the handicap committee meeting yesterday that I referenced, and determined that one guy's performance, the odds of him doing that were about 11,000 to 1 over the last 6 tournaments.
Listen, somebody at your country club is so mad that a math guy showed up. Somebody at your country club has been pulling one over on all the other members in these tournaments. Then you showed up and you put all these scores on a regression analysis, and you were like, wait a second. This guy's like, no, math. And it's so funny because golf is a sport where counting is the entire object of the game. But he was just really mad that someone had actually been able to call him out on that one. Hey, second part of the question. Northeast recruiting has increased over the last 5 to 10 years. Michigan, Ole Miss, and Notre Dame have been 3 programs that have started to take advantage of this growth in football in the Northeast. Curious, do you think that Jeff Hafley and Boston College could become a powerhouse in the ACC if he is able to keep this talent home, including the New Jersey, New York City area? If Hafley can sell this vision, do you think that he would pass over other Power 5 jobs to say? So number one, I think what I'm interpreting from this is, can he lock down the Northeast, make Boston College an even stronger contender on an annual basis in the ACC? And then B, if that works out, do you think that he would stay at Boston College and pass up other opportunities?
So I hate this question because it makes me answer in the negative when I'm really a fan of everything Jeff Hafley's done at Boston College. And BC's been a pretty consistently good program for the last 20 years or so. But it's still Boston College. There are still tough admission standards. It's still while the talent in the Northeast may have been underscouted in some years, and Michigan and a couple other programs, as you mentioned, have gone and plucked a kid here or there. I don't know that the overall talent level is that great up there to sustain to where you really feel like you can go and win conference titles. I'm not going to say ever, but to consistently compete for conference titles in the ACC at Boston College. I don't know if that's really a realistic goal, even with Jeff Hafley there, who I think is a really good coach. And honestly, if Phil Dracovic had stayed healthy this season, I mean, who knows if Hafley wouldn't have got offered one of those really big jobs. He ranks pretty highly in this little metric I keep as far as early talent identification. I mean, it's obviously not just him; it's he and his staff, but they are consistently early to offer kids who end up signing with a Georgia or a Clemson, which I take as a good indicator of the ability to ID talent and trust your own scouting early. But I mean, it's still Boston College. There's a lot of institutional things you have to overcome there, including location, which I still don't view as a plus.
Yeah, my initial reaction hearing the question was, okay, if the talent level's improving in the Northeast compared to where it is compared to other parts of the country, even if it does, and even if Jeff Hafley is able to lock down the Northeast and put walls up, and everybody in the New England area and the upper New York, maybe even New Jersey, goes to Boston College, I still don't know that that'd be enough to win the ACC on a regular basis.
Also, how many of those kids in the Northeast are actually from the Northeast, and how many go to a couple of those boarding schools up there?
Possible.
So is there really is there
a
that
regional loyalty?
Right, exactly. It's almost like when kids go to IMG, people are like, oh, they're all going to go to UF or Miami or Florida State. I'm like, well, no. Actually, the research shows they're pretty likely to go back to their home region.
Yeah.
There's been a couple instances, like Josh Kando was from Baltimore, Indianapolis, but he was from that kind of Mid-Atlantic / Midwest area. I know Baltimore and Indianapolis are not right next to each other, but
neighbors.
Yeah, it was sort of that region of the country, and he decided to not return back home. But a lot of these kids do go back to their home region when they're at a boarding school. So I don't know. Yeah, like Tom, that regionality is not necessarily built in.
Yeah, when it is often something about just talking about the ACC and about football and what kind of schools we're dealing with. You just got to remember that I always put in Boston College with Miami, with Duke, with Wake Forest, which has less than 10,000 undergraduate enrollments. Like, you've just got, you mentioned institutional. I'm guessing that we are talking about a smaller, Jesuit school that has not as many alumni out there, not as wide of a donor base, and just some other challenges when it comes to really being able to mobilize in a way that bigger SEC, bigger Big Ten schools are going to be, which is why, listen, you get a Jeff Hafley. You hope he turns down other Power 5 jobs. You sell him on as many unique things as you can to be able to keep him there. But it is a little bit of a challenge, especially when it comes to recruiting, because so much of recruiting is resources and being able to extend those as far as possible. Coming up on the other side, the Big Ten is among the many conferences all across the country, considering the elimination of divisions. What would that mean for competitiveness, and what would that mean for the Ohio State Buckeyes? That plus our Super Bowl predictions next.
We're here. Let's go save some lives.
Wow.
Is that safe?
This isn't an easy mission, and there may be a few surprises.
Come on!
Is this where I get to say I was born ready?
I'm gonna figure this thing out, whatever it takes. It's gonna be close.
We do our best work when it's close.
This next question, when you said NLDH coming, does that mean Major League Baseball? Is that an announcement?
Yeah.
Like designated hitter will be in the National League?
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean we take overs for all early season games if there's a season?
I'm pretty sure it'll be priced in, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
See. But you know what?
Principles-
I would actually take the unders for National League games. You know why? We're going to get way off base here. But I would guess that the correction will be baked in. But the fact of the matter is most National League teams won't have a DH kind of the caliber that the American League teams have. So they might not be as potent. So I would consider National League unders early in the year.
what's the early season, late season for baseball? Like, isn't there a very like sort of simpler principle? We need to see what the ball's doing, whether the ball's
I need to see the ball. Yeah.
if you guys are beating baseball, please let me know how, because I do not try.
I'm decent on totals. Money lines.
Yeah. No, I just follow Tom and we talk totals. That's it. Is the ball juiced or is the ball not juiced?
Yeah.
Have the odds makers figured out whether the ball's juiced or not?
Mhm.
It's really just about balls and juice.
And last year they were using 2 different balls.
Yeah. No,
They
last
found
year
out
was
like that was so certain teams were playing with a juice ball and certain teams were not at different times of the year. It was
Mhm. It was
tough.
it was a hectic season.
Yeah, the best is when you're making totals plays based on the wind without double checking to see whether or not the park has a dome or not. So you are actually the principle is a wonder, a classic wind aided under, because you've got it blowing in from out. But the problem is it's not really blowing in from out into the plate. It's blowing in from out into the section 113, the doors to the outside.
Was it Minute Maid you did that at?
Yes.
Yeah, one time Chip texts me and Robbie, our friend Robbie Callan, and he's like, yeah, the wind's really howling out in Houston. I'm taking the over. And we're like, bro, there's a roof.
Speaking of golf, Robbie's a stick, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. He's got game. All right. Next question.
Could Robbie beat Danny? That's my mailbag question.
Ooh, he's put up some when he goes out to Vegas and plays in Vegas, he's put up some pretty impressive numbers. I think that it would be a fun thing. Though Danny also said, what's the Theragun? Danny said he's got the Theragun for the golf course. I just love that, to just be like,
Never has pain felt so good.
Do you have one?
Yes.
This is not a free advertisement. If you want to add, holler at us.
Yes.
It's Bud Elliott CFB at gmail.com. That is the best way to be able to get advertising on the Cover 3 podcast. And that is for anyone that wants to do it. All right. Big Ten divisions. Cam asks, with the Big Ten possibly getting rid of divisions to get the best 2 teams to Indianapolis for the championship game, will this only help Ohio State? Obviously, Michigan will be an every year game, but if you want to give Penn State and Michigan State a chance, you wouldn't schedule them to play the Buckeyes every year. But if they did that, it would defeat the purpose. with those games off of Ohio State's schedule and adding games with Northwestern and Illinois more annually, I can only see it making it easier for Ohio State. Thoughts?
I think it'll make it more difficult for Ohio State to win the Big Ten. I think that maybe in the regular season, sure, you're not having to play Michigan, Penn State, and Michigan State every single season eases it up. But when you look at the teams Ohio State tends to lose to in the regular season, it's usually the Purdue's. It's, you know what I mean? It's been some surprise kind of upsets. But I think the problem that Ohio State would face once they get rid of divisions is like we saw this year, like Michigan gets to the Big Ten championship and it's facing Iowa. If Michigan gets to the Big Ten championship and it has to play Ohio State again, because they're the top two teams in the conference, it's a much more difficult path. So it's the same thing with Ohio State. If they get to the title game, they might not be playing a 9-3 team from the West anymore. They'll probably be playing another 10-win team, whether it's Michigan, Wisconsin, Michigan State, whoever it is. So, because that's the best argument for getting rid of the divisions is to make sure you have the best matchup in your conference title game. So I think from that aspect, it'd probably make it more difficult.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I thought about this and I saw the text when I didn't have time to kind of like run the math on it, but I think Tom is probably right because while pods will make it a lot easier for teams not named Ohio State who are currently in the East Division, Ohio State does not have to play Ohio State, right? And the rest of the teams in the East are slightly better usually than the rest of the teams from the West, but having to play one of those Eastern teams again in the title game, which there's also like sort of cream will rise to the top aspect, that like the team that gets through all of that to face you again is probably the best team in the league, where oftentimes you're not facing the best team in the league. I think Tom nailed it there. That makes a lot of sense.
All right. So the great question from Mark in the chat, no divisions really hurts Wisconsin. Wisconsin and Iowa maybe is what you would throw in there.
No divisions hurt the Western powers more than anybody. Yeah, because it's not quite the same trip to the Big Ten championship in Indianapolis that they get now. Like this year, the Big Ten championship game, if you get rid of divisions, obviously the schedules would have been different, but Iowa would not have been in the game. It would have been a Michigan-Ohio State rematch, and probably Michigan State would have been the team in third place. So Iowa might have been in fourth place looking up at a few teams that it had to pass, and Wisconsin went 6-3, so they would have never even been close.
I don't know if we've ever like stated our whether we are fans of it, but divisionless football pod system, like is it sort of thumbs up in terms of you as a college football fan, analyst, and all the other hats we wear in this sport?
I like the pod system and divisionless football simply because it makes you feel like you're in a conference. Like the fact of the thing is, like, since we've expanded to 14 teams in the SEC, the ACC, and the Big Ten, the conferences themselves are the divisions. You know what I mean? Like, you look at Georgia and Alabama, they play in Atlanta for the SEC championship game, but they're playing in the regular season, like every 12 years?
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you're in the same conference, you should not have to wait 12 years to play somebody in your conference. It should be 2 to 3 years at most.
I mean, Tom, look at the Georgia and Texas A&M series so far. Do you know the last time that Georgia played in College Station?
1912.
Yeah, is it before SEC?
No, it's never happened.
Yeah. I was gonna say,
like they played in 2009 in the Independence Bowl. That was about the closest they got geographically. 1953 in Dallas, they played a neutral site game. So yeah, like I'm fine with divisions back when you had 10 teams in a league, right? Or 12 maybe with a 9-game schedule, but pods I really do think is better. It's something that we had Bill on, but like a lot of us have been writing about this for a long time. And it's a necessary evil as we expand.
I like divisions, but I'm not going to miss them. How about this? I like divisions. I like the idea of continuing to, make the competition and draw the focus smaller and smaller and smaller. I think it engages fan bases in that, was it like one third of the FBS is probably going to finish between 6 and 8 wins. You're like a third of college football are perfectly fine college football teams. And some of those perfectly fine college football teams are not going to be anywhere close to sniffing a conference championship in a divisionless format, but you've still got the four-way Big Ten West tiebreaker scenario. We've still got the 7 teams could potentially be in the mix for the Mountain West Championship on the final week of the regular season. But to say goodbye to that in exchange for getting to see these opponents more often, that's an exchange I'm willing to make. So I like divisions for some of that like fun late season drama, but that's the only thing that it really does for me.
But I still think you'll see mostly the same amount of drama without the divisions when it comes to those top 2 spots instead of just trying to finish first in your division. As far as the familiarity thing, I hear that and I understand that, but I also feel like at the same time, if you're any school right now in one of those major conferences in the division, how many real rivals do you have?
Well, the head coaches also are turning over so often that you don't even have a chance to really develop it. Like Jimbo Fisher is one of the longest tenured head coaches in the SEC right now.
And there are very few fan bases out there who truly, I'll use the word, who truly hate like more than 3 other schools. You know what I'm saying?
Tennessee will be one of the schools that bitches like crazy, or that complains like crazy about this, because they think they have rivalries with more teams
than they do.
Auburn honestly might be another one. Like Auburn, Florida is a very traditional SEC rivalry, which has largely been killed by the move to 14-team SEC. Auburn, LSU, we've had the earthquake game. Like that's one that I think some of their fans think is a rivalry. Obviously, the Iron Bowl is a real rivalry. They play Georgia every year. That to me is legitimately a rivalry. And Auburn, Tennessee is one that they used to play all the time, and obviously since divisional play has started, they can't. So we will have some fans of certain teams that are going to be really annoyed, but you will still get those games more often and probably better games. And like in the ACC, Florida State fans hate these divisions because their closest geographic team, a team that they've played for a long time before divisional play came about, was Georgia Tech. It's very drivable for a lot of their fans, right? Or it's a pretty quick flight to Atlanta. And now they only go there, once every 6 or 12 years. Yeah. But I think in most leagues we will not see fans get too upset about this.
Nor will you have to see North Carolina and Wake Forest scheduling non-conference games against each other anymore.
Yeah. Oh, they could if they wanted. Like if they want to make that an annual.
Yeah. But I'm sure, like in a pod system, I would guess Wake and UNC might be in the same pod.
Maybe. I don't know.
Probably.
Could get grouped with UVA and Virginia Tech. I don't know. We don't need to go into ACC.
Jeff, somebody up there by you is going to be angry. I think. I don't know who it'll be, but somebody who's going to get left out of the left out of the triangle.
There's four Carolina schools in the ACC, right? Off the top of my head: Wake, NC State, North Carolina, Duke.
Correct.
You can't figure out a way to just have all those 4, their 3 pods all be them, and then work around it from there.
Do you know who? All right. So this is that a competitive pod?
No, but it's a regionality kind of interest.
Oh, and the pod is just for scheduling, so it's not like you don't get your pod championship.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where would you throw Clemson?
With Georgia Tech and
I think I would give them Georgia Tech,
Florida State,
and Miami.
I don't know if that would.
That would probably not go over well with any of those schools because like you're getting your 3 or 4 best recruiters in the conference by far, with UNC being the other in one pod.
So the north end is easy, right? We go Boston College, Pitt, Syracuse, and who
of the Virginias,
Vatech, and then maybe you make UVA protected as Vatech's cross division.
I don't know. I am glad I am not in the scheduling business because no one ever looks at their schedule and they're like, hey, man, they crushed it. This is awesome. This is the best thing ever. But I do agree that we are probably trending towards that more. And we talk about the pods, but I don't even know if the average fan is going to get it. They're just going to believe we're in divisionless football. And some years we play these teams, some years we don't. So
you could also go protected rivalries. You know what I mean? Like pods is sort of a catch-all term, but you could do a thing where, hey, like we're going to play 4 protected games each year in the ACC, and we will play 4 non-protected rotating opponents, right? So where you're playing you're going to play every team home and away every 4 years.
Got it. All right. So there is a big game coming up this weekend. It is Super Bowl 56, the Cincinnati Bengals against the Los Angeles Rams. The game is in SoFi Stadium in LA. We have, for the second time, two number one overall pick quarterbacks facing off against each other. The last time was in the 2015 season. Peyton Manning defeats Cam Newton. This time, of course, we have Matthew Stafford going up against Joe Burrow. We have covered Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and that LSU team's rise intimately here on the Cover 3 podcast. Stafford a little bit before the time when we got off and rolling. Even in our previous iterations, shout out to those of you who were around for the 24/7 Sports College Football podcast, who were around for the SEC on CBS podcast, who were around for the Eye on College Football podcast, and who were around for the very, very creatively named CBS Sports College Football podcast hosted by Chip Patterson back in 2012. So as we look ahead to this game, I wanted to, first of all, just open it up. Is there anything that you've got about your watching interest that you're excited about? Or you can take us right into the predictions, where if you want to give a pick against the spread, a total, a prop, anything like that. We give away locks all the time for all kinds of events. And so we have got to get in on this just like everybody else with some Super Bowl locks here on the Cover 3 podcast.
I got the under when the line was first posted. It was opened at like 50, which is where I got it. It is down to 48.5. I don't hate that at this point, but I would much rather be where I was on the other side of that 49. So that's really, as far as like standard kind of bets, that's really the only thing I had any interest in this one, because the spread to me is just, it hasn't moved for a reason.
Oh, listen, I think that Joe Burrow with 4.5 is the most fun bet that you can have.
It's 4 now, but yeah.
Or it might move back to 4.5, or maybe you buy the hook. But the idea that you are taking this talent who is on the cut, who has already like accomplished incredible things for this only being his second year in the season, everything that we have seen from him during his Heisman Trophy winning season, the idea that this is going to be close, and that even if it's, what was it, 21-3, 21-3? Yeah, I think the most fun you could have is probably with like a Bengals plus 4.5, because even if the more likely outcome, the Los Angeles Rams winning because Aaron Donald and Von Miller absolutely wreck the game and maybe even make it unwatchable in a way that Tom's under ends up cashing, I think that for the potential for late game heroics with, was it like 6 straight playoff games have been decided by one score or late in the game, with a couple of them even going to overtime. If you think that trend is going to continue, and if you want to root for that trend to continue, I think the most fun you can have is Bengals plus 4.5.
I did play one thing so far, and I don't bet a lot of NFL. This is just from a buddy who does, and is fairly good. 2-point conversion, yes. Like successful 2-point conversion, converted anything over 200. I took some 225.
That's it. No more. No, Tom, you got any other props?
I've got a few props. Yeah. This one, I got this early too. It's come down. I was not alone in this thought process, because there's been a whole lot of talk about like the Bengals offensive line being terrible and the Rams defensive front. It's like, oh my God, Joe Burrow's going to die. I went the different direction. It's like, how is Joe Mixon going to be able to run the ball? Because if you go back to the NFC Championship game, that's essentially what the Rams did. They know that San Francisco kind of does everything it does on offense based off its run game. So they took away the run game, and San Francisco could not run on them, and it kind of impacted everything. And I think that they're going to have a similar kind of approach to this one. So I took the Joe Mixon under 64.5. It's about 61.5, 62 most places now. Still like it. Another one is Matthew Stafford over half an interception.
He's at least going to throw a potential interception, whether or not that interception is.
I don't know as long as there's no Jaquiski Tarts out there. But Stafford just he's got a lot of effort in him. He makes like multiple times per game. He will make a throw where you're like, bro, what the hell are you doing? But he does enough good where it makes up for the rest of it. But I do think that that's going to happen. Plus, he's thrown interceptions in 12 of 21 games this year and 5 of the last 7. And he threw one in the last game where he should have. And then another prop I like, this is kind of speculative more than anything, Cooper Kupp to score 2 touchdowns or more. I got it at plus 280. Including the playoffs, the Bengals have allowed 23 red zone touchdown passes this season, or, one per game. And no player in the NFL has caught more red zone touchdowns than Cooper Kupp or been targeted more often in the red zone than Cooper Kupp. So just using that kind of math, I feel like there's decent value on that.
There is something I'm looking for, and I haven't found it yet. But if you could bet on a specific player to throw a touchdown pass, like a specific non-quarterback to throw a touchdown pass, Cam Akers can throw. He was a high school quarterback, right? Now, I mean, they ran with him most part, but like he's good enough. I've seen him throw like passes in practice at the Army All-America Bowl.
We also saw the wild cam his last year at Florida State. We had all the issues at
and they never really let him throw it, which was weird.
Right.
Or not too often, but like he can throw the ball a little bit, and it wouldn't shock me if I just think they believe in him, right? To have him come back that fast from injury, and then to have him have all those fumbles against the Bucs, and just the next week, like clearly, like they believe in his physical ability. I mean, he was a 5-star kid. That translates pretty well with running backs. It wouldn't surprise me if he had a big game. I'm just trying to figure out how to leverage that.
I will say, for those who like to do the stupid bet of the coin toss, Caesars is offering even odds on heads and tails. They're not charging any juice. So if you just want to have fun and bet the coin toss and actually have 0 EV instead of negative EV, that would be where I'd do it. And I would bet tails, of course.
Yeah, I was going to say, didn't the Bills Chiefs game bring out tails never fails haters?
Who cares? I don't pay attention to the haters.
I think Allen called tails, and it was wrong. And it was he was like, until Allen grows up and realizes you need to make a call other than tails never fails. I'm like, you have 2 choices. It is a coin flip. It's a 50-50 proposition.
People get heated about the coin toss, man. It's like,
the anthem. Remember last year the anthem got voided?
Yes.
Oh, I did not hear that. Why?
Yeah, this TV news guy. Last year the game was in Tampa, right? Yeah, was it 2 years ago? It got voided. This TV news guy recorded it outside the stadium during the practice session, like the day before, and it timed it. I do usually bet the Gatorade color sometime pretty close to game time.
Just on gut feel.
Gut feel.
All right. Any other Super Bowl type traditions or things that you like to do? Obviously, like the social aspect of this has been a little up and down over the last couple of years, but anything that stand out that you really like to dig in on? Just post up.
Like, you mean just for viewing the game?
Yeah, viewing the game. Foods. Any traditions, or is it just kind of like a football, just a later kickoff than the afternoon to like, it's not, because it's right there between, it's not the 4 o'clock window and it's not our 8:15 Eastern time window. I don't know.
I mean, I don't have anything specific. Like if I'm somewhere and it's like a Super Bowl party, I'm not, it's like grilled meats. They're always going to be good, but sometimes in the Midwest, your host doesn't want to be outside grilling on a February Sunday because it's 10 degrees. But I don't know. It's just, there's nothing specific. I'd hope for a good football game more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have traditions for it, but my son's old enough now. He's a Rams fan.
Sick.
Over the last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he likes the
lifelong
blue team.
Rams fan. Yeah.
Like I finally I'm like, man, I watch sports for a living. Like, why would I not buy a nice TV? So I finally bought a nice TV, and the Rams Blues with those HD cameras, like when they go the all blue, they really pop. So he's like, can we watch the blue team? I was like, not the Gators, right? Okay, like the Rams. Cool. Got it. Because like they're not playing on Sundays. So yeah, he likes the blue team. So I'll probably watch a little bit with him. And I did get some of those like beef ribs, the ones you see on in Texas. So I'll probably smoke some of those. Be cool.
We are our go-to if we're showing up somewhere is to bring like a chili mac and cheese, because I want to bring like the ground beef into the cheese and the noodles and just really give you a whole meal for what you're probably going to have as the side or one of like 5 items on your plate. Just kind of check all the boxes. So chili mac and cheese is definitely our go-to food. And then watching my friends who don't take part in such activities watching the twinkle in their eye when they get involved in squares. It's like the one time a year when they'll really start to feel that itch. And I don't force anyone into it, but I do enjoy sitting back and watching them try to root for the exact score at the end of the first quarter, because they're right on the cusp. And then of course, pick six, late field goal. Yeah. They decide that they're not going to score. They're going to wait till the other side of the quarter, and you end up losing that one. So I enjoy it. Yeah. I enjoy watching all the cleaner souls out there, watching them flirt with it, playing some good old friends, some good old friendly game of squares. Short Round just mentioned this one. He said, "What's the betting favorite for the first song played at halftime?" I did mention this in the text to y'all, because we've got Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Mary J. Blige, Kendrick Lamar. It's going to be a medley, right?
It's going to be California Love. They're in LA.
Yeah.
Or they might close on that, though.
I was thinking still DRE, because they've had it in all the promotion, and those keys are just unmistakable.
Yeah.
Eminem's the wild card. Where's he pulling from the catalog? Is this like more recent Eminem, like the hype songs that he sells to ESPN to produce college football? Or are we going, or do we just have him come out and do Forgot About Dre, and just, do something where he's already on there?
He's on that. Yeah.
We haven't had new music from Kendrick in a while, but probably like Loyalty or Humble, one of those like stadium bangers that already gets played in arenas and stadiums.
Yeah. Pimp a Butterfly is probably a little too nuanced for a Super Bowl halftime show.
Yeah. Also, just shout out to us getting old, because when you're younger, you're like, oh my gosh, like these acts are all washed, and then you're coming out here making predictions about which 20 or 30-year-old song is going to be played at the Super Bowl halftime show.
I remember laughing at all the older sports writers when they were super excited about Springsteen playing halftime, and it's like, oh God, now the bands that I listened to growing up are playing halftime. And that's the other thing too, going off, like, do either you watch that show Yellow Jackets?
Mm-mm.
No. My wife might start it.
The scariest part of that show to me is the fact that this is supposed to be like a throwback to a long time ago, or not a long time ago, but like the things you see where, like, when we were growing up, you'd see shows from the 60s or 70s, like Dazed and Confused, like those kind of things. Now those movies are about the era when I was in high school, and it's like, oh shit.
Did you see the video I put out about what current recruits remember about college football?
I did.
Yes. It's depressing
making that.
It's depressing as hell.
Because the line that you used was the first college football superstar that a lot of today's recruits know is Cam Newton. Bro, we were working in this job when Cam Newton was out.
I know.
Woo. And we start with Auburn, and we finish with an Auburn Heisman Trophy winner.
Maybe that's who Auburn should hire, Cam Newton. He's the only one that appears capable of leading them to a national title.
He runs a good 7-on-7 team.
Cam for Auburn. It started here on the Cover 3 podcast. That is the leader that you need. I mean, just imagine the cryptographs that you can have all across this special Cam language.
Oh my God. Imagine the Auburn, the lettering on the jerseys for Auburn. He'll have it all in his Instagram kind of social media font.
Incredible. I hope you all enjoy the Super Bowl, and we'll keep tabs on the latest at Auburn, and of course keep you in the loop as well here on the Cover 3 podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Cam for Auburn. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.